Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Yesterday, Friday, May the 13th, 2022, we saw Hannah Rankin defend her WBA and IBO world titles against Alejandra Ayala of Mexico. And this took place in Glasgow. Hannah may sound English, but she's a proud Scotswoman, so it was a bit of a homecoming for her. And this was a first defence for Hannah, who had won, I think it was both titles against Maria Lindberg, definitely a veteran. Maria's in her mid-40s. Hannah beat her over 10 rounds back in November of 2021 to pick up these titles. So Hannah is a champ. She went into the fight against Alejandra Ayala with 11 wins and 5 defeats. But as we always say, or as I always say anyway, records are for DJs. You know, you've got to look deeper than just the numbers. And if you look at the quality of Hannah's opposition, she has fought Clarissa Shields, went the distance with Clarissa, got whitewashed. I thought it was a bit unfair. I thought she won a couple of rounds against Shields, but she lost that fight. Then she fought Savannah Marshall later on. Marshall, a big middleweight. No way is Hannah a middleweight. Got stopped in 7, floored a couple of times. So the quality of Hannah's opposition is decent. It's very good, actually, very good. But as we know, there aren't too many world-class, what we would term world-class female fighters in each division. The gene pool is quite shallow. It's still an evolving sport. It's made great strides over the last 10 years, but a lot of people walking around with world title belts, and you would argue if you looked at the male equivalents, they wouldn't be world-class fighters, never mind world champions. But nevertheless, let's not be cynical. You know, again, it's a growing sport. Let's not make the apples and oranges argument. Women's boxing, it's on the up. And it was good to see Scotswoman Hannah go back to Glasgow, defend her titles. Took place at the Hydro Arena in Glasgow. I've never been there, but, you know, good homecoming for her. And she was in against a Mexican opponent who had quite a similar record. Alejandra Ayala had 14 wins and 5 defeats. So very similar record. The difference is that I wasn't familiar with Alejandra Ayala, so I went and looked on BoxRec at her record. And unlike Hannah, whose quality of opposition is good, Alejandra's is very poor. Certainly in terms of victories, because she's got 14 wins, 8 KOs. That's quite a high percentage for any woman fighter, because the women only fight 2-minute rounds, and they only do 10 rounds for their world title fights. But if you break down the win column in her record, she only had 1 win over a woman with a winning record. And there were, I think, a couple of debutantes are on there, and you know, she's also fought Savannah Marshall and didn't go 2 rounds. So Savannah, big hitter, but Alejandra just couldn't hang with her, whereas Hannah sort of could for a while, even though Savannah ground her down. But the quality of opposition, at least in the win column for Ayala, was very poor, very poor. And therefore, despite the natural, almost genetic Mexican toughness, she had her work cut out away from home against Hannah Rankin, who has got a lot of experience at true world level. So the fight starts, and the first thing is the size of the two ladies. Hannah, from the waist down, very powerful looking, big, powerful looking legs. Having said that, a little bit of fat around the middle, and I'm wondering if she could make welterweight, maybe at a squeeze, I don't know. But powerful legs, good base to work from. Alejandra looked to me like a smaller woman, probably someone who could make welter. I don't know, you know, maybe those last few pounds do drain a person. Maybe sometimes you get fighters who are sort of between weights, but certainly the smaller woman against Hannah. But she didn't take a step back, Ayala. She went straight at Hannah. Hannah went straight at her. And to be honest with you, for 5 rounds, this was a competitive fight. And in my view, it was made competitive by the fact that Hannah Rankin, for whatever reason, was fighting Ayala's game. Now, it could be that she wanted to entertain the crowd. It was her homecoming, so she was feeling a bit of that nervous energy. It could be that she felt she could just smash right through Ayala. Perhaps she felt, well, this girl's faced no one, and every time she's faced anyone half decent, she's lost, so I'm just going to smash right through her. But for whatever reason, Ayala was having some success, and these were very, very close rounds. Very close rounds. Steve Lillis on the Fight Zone commentary, he said after 3 rounds, I've got it, I think 2-1 to Hannah, but you could have it 3-0 to Ayala. And you could. You could have it 3-0 to either girl. It was that type of fight for the first 5 rounds, and those type of rounds. Who's winning them? Toss a coin. All right. Then in the 5th round, was it the 5th or the 6th? I think it was the 5th. I think it was a clash of heads, and suddenly, was it the right eye? I think it was the right eye. There's a big, big swelling appearing above Hannah's eye, and it must have been a clash of heads, because I don't remember Ayala landing anything really more constructive than some half decent jabs and maybe some cuffing punches. I don't think a punch would have done that. I think it was a clash of heads. Ayala, by the way, when she was jabbing, she had the old amateur mistake of leaning over as she jabbed, so she's sort of exposing her jaw, and really quite an amateurish style, Ayala. But Hannah was fighting down to her level. But then the 5th round, there was the bang of heads, and a big swelling appeared above Hannah's eye, and that seemed to wake her up. It seemed to wake her up. Meanwhile, Ayala was beginning to look a little bit low on energy. And from the 6th round onwards, it was all Hannah Rankin. Again, Ayala, even when she was fresh, she was kind of pushing her punches a bit, throwing jabs out of range, and there were an awful lot of amateur habits there, still there. Amateurish habits, I should say. And Alejandra's 33, so I don't know what age she was when she came to boxing, but she's looked like someone who'd started late. Hannah was a couple of years younger, 31. But again, the experience, not necessarily the record, the statistical record, but the experience was clearly telling with Hannah, because she just looked like the better schooled fighter. But she neglected her tools for the first 5 rounds. The second half of the fight, she took over. In the 8th round, she beat the living tar out of Ayala. I mean, almost stopped her. If these had been 3-minute rounds, I think Hannah might have got Alejandra Ayala out of there in the 8th. And Alejandra was looking very, very weary. At the start, she was pushing her punches. Now she was throwing them like she was underwater. Her legs were leaden. Up close, she was mauling, grabbing and holding. Hannah was trying to do some sensible work, some skillful work, use her tools. But in the 8th round, yeah, it looked like Alejandra might even be pulled out by her corner, but she wasn't. She came out for the 9th and did, marginally better. But it was all Hannah Rankin. But it did look, she actually had a go in the 9th round, Ayala, and lost the round, but didn't look like she was about to be stopped. Again, she sat on her stool between the 9th and the 10th, and she looked absolutely shattered. Came out for the last round. Again, only 2-minute rounds, but this time Hannah didn't need that 3rd minute, because she got Ayala on the ropes. Ayala just could not move. She could barely stand up. Had she been mid-centre of the ring, she'd have probably collapsed through exhaustion. Hannah railed on her, was landing big right hands. From the 8th round onwards, the right hand couldn't miss, and the referee stepped in and stopped Ayala from further punishment. The expression of absolute exhaustion and distress on Ayala's face was actually quite disturbing, because she knew she'd been battered. She had nothing left. She had to be helped to her corner, sat on the stool, was given oxygen. But the up and all of it was a 10th round TKO for Hannah Rankin, who retains her WBA and IBO super welterweight titles against a very limited opponent. A very game, but a very limited opponent. And to me, this showed the good and the bad of women's boxing. It showed the good in that you've got 2 ladies who really gave their all. One of them had skills, which unfortunately she neglected for a large chunk of the fight. The other one didn't have a particularly wide toolbox, but at the same time had a lot of guts. What do you expect from a Mexican lady? They're all tough girls, aren't they? But the depth of talent in women's boxing is clearly lacking. And let's bear in mind that one of Hannah Rankin's contemporary champions is Natasha Jonas, who moved up, 3 weights to win her title, knocked out the girl in 2 rounds. And now they're talking about putting Natasha. No way on earth is she any bigger than, say, a light welterweight. Probably not even that. She'd probably still make lightweight if she dieted properly. But there she is at super welterweight, and now they're talking about putting Hannah in with Natasha. That would be, despite the size difference, that would be a competitive fight, because Natasha really does have all the skills that, unfortunately, Signorina Ayala lacked, sadly. But okay, we take the good with the bad, and it's good for women's boxing that 2 girls headlined a card in Scotland. Hannah's going to go on, look for the big payday, look for the big opponents. Alejandra, I don't know how much further she can go. It looks like it's a bit too late for her to unlearn all the bad habits and learn some good ones. But she gave her all. She got nothing to be ashamed of. So this fight was on Fight Zone from Glasgow. I don't know whether you saw it. If you did and you got anything to say, leave your comments below. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We got Charlo Castino 2 coming up, so I'll probably do a video on that. Until then, be good, take care, and speak soon. Bye for now.